My brother walked through our front door last Tuesday after being missing for 3 years, and he looked at me like he was insane when he started crying. He was wearing the same clothes from the day he disappeared, carrying the same backpack, even had the same coffee stain on his shirt from breakfast that morning. When he asked him where the hell he'd been, he checked his phone, looked confused, and decided he'd only been gone for about 10 minutes. My name is Sophie Martinez. I'm 29 years old, and I need to tell you what happened to my brother Jake because it's something that science can't explain and the authorities refuse to investigate. Jake disappeared on Oktober 15, 2020 during a solo camping trip in the Cascade Mountains of Washington State. He was 25 at the time, an experienced hiker and outdoorsman who done the particular trail dozens of times before. He texted me the morning saying he was heading up to Cooper Lake for some photography, sent me a picture of his breakfast burrito with a coffee stain, and he told me he'd be back by dinner. When he didn't come home that night, he waited until morning before calling the ranger station, thinking maybe he decided to camp overnight. The search and the rescue operation lasted 3 weeks. They found his car at the trailhead exactly where he'd parked it, his tent set up at his usual campsite, but no more sign of Jake anywhere. His camera was missing, his phone was gone, and his backpack wasn't in the tent, which suggested he'd gone out for a day hike and he never made it back. Search teams covered hundreds of square miles, brought in dogs and the helicopters, even dragged parts of the lake, but it was like he just vanished into thin air. My parents were destroyed by it. Mom blamed herself for not insisting he'd take someone with him. Dad became obsessed with searching the mountains every weekend for months afterward. He spent countless hours online, reading about missing persons in national forests, falling down rabbit holes about strange disappearances and the unexplained vanishings. Some of the stories were eerily similar, experienced hikers disappearing without a trace in areas they know well, but none of them ever came back to explain what happened. After a year, we held a memorial service even though we had no more body. The authorities had basically given up, classified Jake as a presumed dead hiker who'd probably fallen into a crevasse or been attacked by an animal, and encouraged US to seek closure. Mom and Dad moved to Arizona to try and start fresh somewhere without a constant reminder. He stayed in Seattle, unable to let go of the apartment we shared, keeping his room exactly as he'd left it like some kind of shrine. 3 years is a long time to grieve. I'd gone through all the stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and he had finally reached something like acceptance. I'd started dating again, was thinking about getting a new apartment, had even boxed up some of Jake's things in preparation for donating them. Then on Tuesday, Oktober 15, 2023, exactly 3 years to the day after he disappeared, he came home from work and he found him sitting on our couch looking enraged. "Where have you been?" he asked, standing up when he walked in. "I've been waiting like 15 minutes and you're not answering your phone." He literally dropped my grocery bags, oranges rolling across the floor, unable to process what he was seeing. He looked exactly the same, not a day older, same shaggy brown hair, same stubble, same faded Nirvana t-shirt he'd been wearing that morning 3 years ago. He couldn't speak for a solid minute, just stood there staring while my brain tried to catch up with reality. Jake started looking worried, asking if he was okay, reaching out to touch my arm like he thought he was having a medical emergency. When he finally found my voice, all he could say was his name, just Jake over and over. Andy then he was crying, Andy hugging him, Andy he was awkwardly patting my back saying, "Okay, this is weird, did something happen?" "Jake, what's the date?" He managed to choke out. He pulled out his phone, looked at the screen, and said October 15. "Why?" He asked him what year, and he laughed like he was making a joke. 2020. "Obviously. Sophie, are you feeling alright?" The way he said it, so casual and confused, made my stomach drop. I pulled out my own phone with shaking hands and showed him the date, Oktober 15, 2023. He stared at it for a long moment, then checked his phone again, then looked around the apartment like he was seeing it for the first time. "That's not possible," he said quietly. "He just went for a hike this morning. He was gone maybe 10 minutes before he got turned around and he came back to the car." We sat down and he made him tell me everything he remembered. He said he'd driven up to Cooper Lake this night he'd planned, set up his camp, and he then headed out on the ridge trail to catch the sunset. About 20 minutes into the hike, he'd noticed the light getting weird, kind of shimmery, and the distorted light hit waves even though it was October. He'd stopped to take some photos, and that's when he heard what he described as a low humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It wasn't mechanical, he explained, his hands gesturing as he tried to find the right words. It was more like the air itself was vibrating, and he started feeling really disoriented, like vertigo but worse. He decided he head back to camp because he thought maybe he was getting out a good sickness or something. He said the trail back seemed shorter than it should have been, and the light stayed weird the whole time. When he got to his car, he driven straight home, the whole trip feeling slightly off but nothing he could put his finger on. It showed him the news articles about his disappearance, the social media posts from the search effort, even pulled up a memorial service video on my laptop. With this piece of evidence, he watched his face go from skeptical to confused to absolutely terrified. This isn't real, he kept saying. This is some kind of elaborate prank, right? Where are the mom and the dad? Why aren't they here? Telling him that our parents had moved to Arizona to cope with his death was one of the hardest conversations I'd ever had. Showing him photos of himself from 3 years ago and having him realize he looked identical now. Explaining that he should be 28 but was still 25. Watching him call mom and hear her break down crying on the other end of the line. The whole evening was surreal, like trying to explain color to someone who's been blind. Except the thing we were trying to explain was that he'd lost 3 years without experiencing them. Mom and dad throughout the next day. The reunion was intense, lots of crying and hugging and disbelief. But also this weird tension because Jake remembered them from 3 years ago and they'd aged while he hadn't. He kept staring at Dad's gray hair, at the new lines on Mom's face, touching his own unchanged reflection in mirrors like he couldn't quite believe it. We spent hours going through everything that had happened while he was gone, showing him world events he'd missed, explaining how the pandemic had changed everything, watching him process 3 years of history in a single overwhelming day. The authorities were less helpful than I'd hoped. We filed reports. Jake was examined by doctors who confirmed he was in perfect health, and the detectives interviewed him about his experience. But without any physical evidence or logical explanation, they basically classified it as a cold case anomaly and he moved on. One detective even suggested Jake had been living off a grid somewhere and he was making up the time distortion story, which was insulting and clearly wrong to anyone who knew him. That's when he started researching time distortion and relativity. I'm not a physicist, but I'd taken enough college science to understand the basics of Einstein's theories about time dilation. At high speeds or in strong gravitational fields, time can pass at different rates for different observers. But those effects require extreme conditions, near light speed velocity or proximity to a black hole, nothing that could happen on a hiking trail in Washington state. He found online communities discussing similar cases, people who disappeared and returned with no more memory of time passing or claiming only brief period had elapsed. There was a case in 1975 where a hunter vanished for 5 days but swore he'd only been gone for an hour. Another from 2008 where a woman disappeared from a state park for 3 months but had no more memory of anything past the first few minutes of her hike. Though common threads were always the same, experienced outdoors people, sudden disorientation, strange light or sound phenomena, and the complete disconnect between subjective and the objective time. Some of the theories he found range from plausible to absolutely crazy. Localized temporal anomalies caused by unknown geological phenomena, interdimensional portals, alien abduction with memory suppression, even government experiments with time manipulation technology. Most of it was conspiracy theory nonsense, but the pattern of cases was real and documented. Something weird was happening in certain locations, and the scientific community was either ignoring it or didn't have the tools to study it. Jake decided he wanted to go back to the trail, against everyone's advice, against Mom's tears and my better judgment. He insisted that understanding what happened was more important than being safe. He needed to know if he lost 3 years or if he somehow skipped forward. He sighed, and the only way to find out is to go back and see if it happens again. We compromised by making it a group expedition. Me, Jake, our friend Marcus who's an engineer, and Marcus's girlfriend Lisa who works in emergency medicine. We planned it carefully, multiple GPS trackers, constant communication protocol, and the agreement that at the first sign of anything strange, we'd all leave immediately. Mom and Dad weren't happy about it, but they understood that Jake needed answers, and honestly, so did he. We returned to Cooper Lake on a Saturday morning 6 weeks after Jake came back. The weather was similar to the day he disappeared, clear and cool, perfect hiking conditions. We set up base camp and then headed out on the Ridge Trail, Jake leading us to the exact spot where he'd experienced the weird light and the humming sound. For the first hour, nothing unusual happened, just a normal hike through beautiful mountain scenery. Then around the same spot Jake had marked on his GPS, we all felt it. The air pressure changed, light right before a thunderstorm, and the light took on that shimmery quality Jake had described. A low-frequency hum started up, so the view felt it in your chest more than heard it. And all our phones started glitching, screens flickering and the GPS coordinates jumping randomly. Marcus pulled out an AMF meter he brought and it was going crazy, reading electromagnetic frequencies way beyond normal background levels. We should go back, Lisa sighed, and we all agreed immediately. But as we turned around, we realized the trail looked different. Not drastically, but wrong in subtle ways. Like landmarks were in slightly different positions. My watch said we'd been hiking for 90 minutes, but Jake's phone, which had been working fine all morning, was showing that only 5 minutes had passed since we'd left camp. The discrepancy between our devices was growing as we stood there. We started moving fast, almost running down the trail, and the disorientation got worse. It felt like the landscape was shifting around us, like we were walking on a treadmill where the scenery repeated. Marcus's AMF meter finally exploded in a shower of sparks, and that's when we saw it. A section of fire about 30 feet ahead that was visibly distorted, rippling lighted shimmer but perfectly vertical, stretching from the ground up into the sky as far as we could see. Don't get near it, Jake sighed, his voice shaking. That's what he walked through. You remember now, he thought it was this weird light but he walked right through it. We gave the distortion a wide berth, scrambling through the brush to get around it, and the moment we passed it, everything snapped back to normal. The humming stopped, the light returned to natural, and our phones all suddenly synced at the same time, showing we'd been gone for 2 hours. We practically ran back to camp, packed everything in record time, and drove straight home. On the way down the mountain, Jake was quiet, staring out the window, and finally he sighed. I think you know what happened. The distortion is some kind of temporal boundary, and when he walked through it 3 years ago, he crossed into a pocket where time runs differently. He spent what felt like 10 minutes on the other side, but out here, 3 years passed. Marcus, who's the science guy among us, started theorizing about localized space-time anomalies, maybe caused by unusual concentrations of mass or energy deep underground. If there's a massive magnetic deposit or some kind of geological formation we don't understand, it could theoretically warp space-time enough to create time dilation effects. He said, we're talking about something that shouldn't exist according to our current understanding of physics, but clearly, it does. We reported everything to the authorities, the scientists, to anyone who would listen. Most dismissed us as attention seekers or misguided amateurs, but a few researchers took us seriously. A physics professor from University of Washington arranged an expedition to the site with proper equipment, and they confirmed the electromagnetic anomalies and they documented the visible distortion. They couldn't explain it, couldn't even properly measure it, but they at least confirmed we weren't making it up. Jake's been back for months now, and he's still adjusting to a world that moved on without him. He missed his girlfriend getting married, missed the pandemic entirely, misses years of music and the movies and the cultural changes that everyone else experienced. Sometimes he gets this lost look, like he's a time traveler trying to fit into a future that's only slightly different but fundamentally alien. Our parents moved back to Seattle, wanting to be close to him, and we're all trying to rebuild our family that grief had fractured. The trail at Cooper Lake has been closed indefinitely. The Forest Service put up barriers and warning signs, though they're citing geological instability rather than admitting there's a time distortion on public land. Jake still has nightmares about walking through the shimmer, about the possibility that he might suddenly skip forward again without warning. He wears 3 watches now, or since, checking them obsessively to make sure time is passing normally. He thinks about what would have happened if he'd been in the temporal pocket longer. If instead of 10 subjective minutes, he spent an hour or a day, would he have come back decades in the future? Would we have been dead before he returned? The thought keeps me up at night, the fragility of time, the idea that there are places on us where the fundamental fabric of reality is this broken. What haunts me most is that Jake is one of the lucky ones. He came back, he got to reunite with his family. He has a chance to rebuild his life even if he lost 3 years. But there are hundreds of other missing persons cases in national forests, people who vanished without a trace near similar anomalies. How many of them walked through temporal distortions and they are living out decades in what they think are minutes, not knowing that everyone they love is aging and grieving? How many are still out there, trapped in pockets of slow time, waiting to return to a world that will have forgotten them? Jake and Dee talk about it sometimes, late at night when neither of us can sleep. He says the worst part isn't the 3 years he lost, it's knowing that from his perspective, he did everything right. He went for a short hike, felt weird, came straight home, and somehow that reasonable decision cost him 3 years of his life. There's no more lesson in it, he told me once. No more moral about being careful or paying attention. He was careful, he did pay attention, and it happened anyway because sometimes the universe has glitches that don't care about your caution. I guess that's what you want people to understand from this story. Time isn't as stable as we think it is. There are places where it bends and it breaks in ways we don't understand. My brother walked through one of those breaks and he came back changed. Not physically but in every other way that matters. He's a person out of time now, Forever 25 in a world that aged 3 years without him, carrying memories of a reality that only he experienced. The scientists are still studying the Cooper Lake anomaly, trying to understand what causes it and whether there are others like it around the world. Jake refuses to go back, says once was enough, but he's cooperating with the research, hoping that understanding these temporal distortions might help explain other disappearances. Maybe someday we'll have answers, a scientific explanation for why certain places can trap people in different time streams. Until then, all we can do is be grateful he came back and hope that wherever else these anomalies exist,